Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. Excuse the hair, it's growing out. Excuse the setup and or casual outfit. We're having a chill day. You might want to do that too. If you're here, don't know, might be meant for you. I was told that this one would be about creativity. I'm not really sure other than that. And let's face it, you could be creating a painting, you could be creating a baby, you could be creating a solution to the problem of nuclear power. Without getting into the cards, I can't get more specific. So we're just going to say creativity very, very generally. I've done some reversals into the card sets that we're using, but I don't know what's coming either. So let's just get to it, shall we? It's getting me to do this again. This is a commentary on my setup not being ideal. However, some of you have been told prefer it to the overhead shots. So do let me know actually whether you prefer to see the cards or whether you prefer to see me slightly wonky and climbing about. But on person and in camera, as if we're talking in the same room, which I like since we're global. Okay, so we've got the Thief. Sheds light on the potential wealth within you that can never be stolen. Interesting start, no? And then I'm going to get one tarot with that, and then another archetype, and we're going to go from there. So, why am I closing my eyes? I never do that. Oh, I'm going to get visuals this time, am I? Okay. There's something here with horses. I'm not sure where that fits in yet. And then we have 19, the sun. Please don't reflect. There we go. And it came out with, ooh, the Eight of Wands. Okay. Some of you can expect a visit soon from somebody that you've been wanting to see for a while. And the Thief there, that's about feeling worthy of such things, feeling that there is something within you that cannot be emulated, taken. Emulated was a word that pinged off for me. Why the horses? Okay, we're going to get another of these and we'll get into the horses. If you haven't been with me before, I do a process that is sort of part tarot, part channeling, and sometimes it comes in very strange ways that are a bit sort of modular. So bear with, but we will get there. And whatever you've seen in the kind of preview video of this in my shorts, I'm sure is the main message. I've got a done one, but I'm not sure whether that meant to come out. What's the spotlights your positive, seductive qualities? Nice. Good for you, some of you. I want to pick another there. I don't feel that was completely it. Advocate. Inspires you to put compassion into action. So we got a horse, and the thing that I was thinking of when we got the horse was not just the Kid on the Sun card, which fits, but also Twin Peaks sort of version of horses, where they're quite sinister and they can represent, it's like a disassociative imposition of the unfamiliar, or a kind of state which you're falling into where you're drooged from reality, or stepping outside of it, right? It's the something put in the milk. It's not seeing the full picture, willingly or otherwise, because of heading into some kind of alternate state. And what I'm hearing is that state can be magical as well. So some of you have been pursuing spirituality in a way which is not an unhealthy pursuit, clearly, you're on the channel, but is, there's something about the practice of it that's become distracting, dissociative, not quite in the realm that it should be, or not quite used in the way that it should be. What I'm hearing is you're not on the wrong track, but you're using the right track for the wrong things. Queen of Pentacles reversed. So there's a block, right? That's what that tells me. Sun, the 8, and the Queen with the Thief. I think when it comes to your creative life, and you may extend this to your spiritual life as you see fit, because we have magicians on this channel, we have religious people, we have people who are unaffiliated. But there's something here about tuning in. I'm now hearing Abraham Hicks going tuned in, tapped in, turned on. So you might be doing manifesting type stuff. But there's a tuning into something which is used as an escape route from believing that you deserve to practice the other stuff. Ooh, that's a meaty one, isn't it? I didn't quite expect to get deep on this, but I suppose we're under blue light, so it's got to happen, hasn't it? I'm being called to look at the shadow of the thief as well, although we got it in the upright. And it has stealing money, creative ideas, affection, or other powers you think you lack. With the thief, I always think of copycat energy. And if you've either had a copycat around you as of late, and that's why you've drawn to my channel, because I've talked about that at length in various readings, or if you've been in an energy which wasn't, shall we say, entirely original, and that's okay sometimes too, there's something here about needing to do that or needing to interact with that, because there's a self-concept that there's a space, right? There's a distance between, if you imagine your ideal self, or the life you would like to live, or the wish that you would like to come true, the person that you would like to be in either creative or spiritual terms, and for some of you that's very interlinked, right? There is a distance between that image that you have almost stood outside of somebody within that character, and I'm hearing main character energy, so that's the right word, and the place that you're stood at now. And I feel like there's either someone around you imitating who you are now in order to push you into that gap where you can get to this final thing, or you've been taking elements of what somebody else does, what somebody else practices, how they present aesthetically, the kinds of things they say, anything really, in order to sort of push yourself into that gap so that you can fill it, because you believe on some level that you can't fully get to that final boss of a person you would like to be without the little push of imitation. I feel like, oh, this is a really risky thing to say, and I'm sorry if I'm offending any of you, but I've been here. So many of us on the spiritual path have been here. It's like the sensation is, if I just pick this bit out and no one will notice, and if I just do this thing, or if I just repeat this thing I heard said and no one will notice, it'll give me enough of a like on a roll energy to get to the person that I know I actually am. It's this strange, there's a back and forth with your self-image, because you know on one level that you are destined to become a certain thing, and you know that you are very much capable of that, and I would agree with that. I'm seeing this for you, good for you. But also, there's this section of you that feels that in order to get to that, they need to either learn one final lesson from a very difficult interaction, which then energetically sort of invited in, or you kind of need to wear the clothing of being somebody else or something else in a way that's a little bit of emulation in order to feel like you're stepping into the role adequately enough that you know that you can fill in the rest then, right? It's almost like you know that you're unique, you know that you have all of this stuff going on, and you can put that out into the world, and you can, you know, use it to help other people, or use it to sort of elevate to your highest self. But not yet, or not quite like this, or there's this thing of like, and tomorrow when I've taken this mask off again, I'll be a little further on and I can do it properly. You know what I'm gonna say? Don't work like that. Right? It's this is partly why we have the 8. Like, you will be encountering somebody that you haven't in a bit, or that you've been wanting to get in contact with, or there's going to be some kind of communication, message, email, whatever coming in that you've been hoping for regarding this issue, by the way. Not like, I'm not talking unless it's related, I'm not talking a love life thing or a family thing or whatever. This is to do with your creative energy, your spirituality, your kind of sacral center stuff. But even as that does come in, the horse that I'm seeing is stood in one place, right? And even the sun card within this deck, it's kind of static. It's very statuesque. It's very fixed in place, right? It reminds me of architecture. I think that you want some kind of spiritual momentum to take hold of you. And on some level, you've either told yourself that by emulating another person's style of doing things, the natural course of events will take place, or on a sort of more soul contract level, you've perhaps invited in somebody who challenges you where you are now to push you into being a little further than where you are now, or into getting it a little differently or harder, or understanding things in a slightly different way. And I speak from such recent experience when I say that sometimes confrontational connections, or connections that emulate you and get away with it or whatever, may be the thing that pushes you into relating to forgiveness or to other people or even to vengeance slightly differently than you used to, and expanding whatever your spiritual mode is. I think that's the journey you're on. I think that's why I'm reading for you. Useful things on my channel might be the enemy reading that came out a couple of days ago. Before that, I think there's a copycat reading still out there. I'm not sure whether I took that down or not. But there's certainly a rivalry reading with cartomancy, extended stuff, playing cards, that really goes into the energy of having attracted a challenging connection in, and kind of what you do and where you go from there. Also, self-concept reading. I know I keep recommending it in these bits and bobs readings, but it seems that many of you sort of coming in waves in October are needing the self-concept reading for some reason or another. It's a big theme at the minute, and perhaps that's because of the sort of general energies. So, what I should say as well about this horse thing, you don't need to be a Twin Peaks fan to really understand it, but it is like I say, it's sort of dissociative. It's about either being drugged or drugging yourself. Please don't censor me. Oh God, I can't believe I've said that out loud. I may bleep that just because of YouTube cracking down. But it's about doing that. It's about that process of distancing in order to avoid either a trauma or a big truth or something like that. And for so many people coming in spirituality, what you miss from places like TikTok is that it can be a bit of it can be something that you can overdo. Let's not use the other word. You overdo on in order to kind of evade some stuff that's really hard. And it's a complete sort of paradox in a way, because so many people come to spirituality to look at the hard things, to do the shadow work, to sort of go through understanding the process of their past and elevating to a different future in a way that no other paradigm sort of offers a structure and a solution for. So many people are rubbed up the wrong way by the idea that it can be somewhere to escape to. But so often why spiritual community doesn't always work, or why it sort of builds up steam and then runs out of it or whatever, is because a lot of seekers start with the best of intentions and then realise the work that they need to be doing, or the truth that they need to face, or even the people they need to let go of. And then when they get to that stumbling block, they bury that and they go, you know what, I think I'm the exception to that rule. I think actually just me doing it is functional. And they sort of bypass that bit of the work and get really gung-ho about another aspect of it, in a way that can be, you know, it really can overdo it, or it can put them into an area of mania for some, either religious mania or kind of vulnerability to cults or cult-like financial schemes. Or, you know, if you are in the magical community, we're talking major-sitis, or getting lost in your own paradigm to the point where you're no longer functioning psychologically in a practical sense as well as a spiritual one, right? So it can be a very dangerous thing. And I'm not saying that to scare you so much as to say, be very aware of why you came to this. And it's okay to come for reasons that aren't always, you know, about saving the world or whatever. And to have a mix of things going on, and to like the aesthetics, and to be into this thing because it's cool, and want to be able to do that thing because it's cool. But once you're really in it, take note of what sort of work you really don't want to do. And especially if there are teachers that you respect, or systems within which you thought you'd be very comfortable continuing and learning. If there's like a whole topic that you want to miss out, that's a thing. And it's probably that you need to do that work even more than the rest of it, right? Hi, sorry if there's a slight change in position or anything like that. There's certainly a colour change, right? I've expanded the range a little bit because we've done the deep dark blue work, and I feel we can now address a wider picture. But my phone completely ran out of space at that point. And that was both an emphasis on what I was saying about not honing in too much on one small thing, and instead keeping your skill set, your focus broad in any discipline, right? It doesn't just have to be spiritual. This is a creativity reading, but I feel like I'm talking particularly to you magical folk right now. But yeah, keeping it broad, but also allowing for interruption, spontaneity, allowing for the circumstances that are reflected back to you, particularly socially, to teach you something new about where it is that you want to go next. So with all of that in mind, let's get to another card. There may also be a need for you to very practically clean out, right? I had to clean out a load of files in order to be able to film the rest of this one, just because I've been so carried away with practice that I haven't done that work. And there may be an analogous thing there of going through books that are no longer relevant to what you believe, going through plans that you had for yourself, which, although well thought out, may not actually be the accurate picture of where you're headed anymore. What was that Don Juan meaning again? Advocate. Spotlighting positive seductive qualities and inspiring you to put compassion into action. I think I'm talking to people who would identify as light workers, or as people who are a voice for others in a spiritual sense right now. And that can be creatively too, because you can make art that speaks to people about the deeper truths of what's going on for them. I'm taking from the bottom all the time, so this is, I know, let's skip one out. Right, that's my sign to stop doing that. There is work with roots, with background to be done. So whether that's representative of you being a root worker, hit me up down below if you are, that's cool. Or whether it's some kind of ancestor stuff, or that you help other people to process their pasts in order to move them into the future. There is absolutely something going on here with both downwards and past, right? Or what's been walked over, what's been left behind, what's been relegated to the underground in terms of taboo as well, particularly if you're of a religious ilk. There's something about your work that involves, excuse me, hello, that involves speaking to those things loudly and without fear in order to unblock my suddenly blocking throat chakra. The work you do is important, otherwise my camera wouldn't have stopped and my throat wouldn't have gone all screech from Saved by the Bell just there, right? There's something I'm not saying this in a threatening way, because I think a lot of people who talk about this stuff on the internet watch too many horror movies, quite frankly, but if there was anything sort of antithetical going on in our world to spirituality, if there was anything you would consider to be adversarial, whether that's just a particular industrial complex or other, I think that you are quite important in the dismantling of that. And I don't want to say anything more extreme than that, because I'm not a person who believes in adversarial entities so much as people can get a bit out of hand, they can get a bit parasitic, energies can get a bit parasitic, it happens. It's easily cleared up, usually while the person is alive and well, and there's nothing kind of demonic going on there or anything. I'm not really someone who believes in, you know, one thing leeching off another thing, or bad vibes, or demon people, or lizard people, or any of that sort of stuff that seems to be going around a lot at the moment. I think they're all useful metaphors, but I suspect that anything that wants to take focus or energy away from work like the work that you and I mutually do, it's just people who aren't ready to process their shit yet, or energies that don't want to be processed, right? And that's as simple as. Okay, there was one of these facing the wrong way round, so there's some, again, it's like there's an outlier energy with you. It's very Uranus. It's this kind of no. I am the person who's not going to do that. I'm facing the other way. And this may come across in the way that you present yourself, or it may be that you, I'm thinking of, who is it in, I think it's in Sandman and not Hellblazer, but is it Thessaly? There's just like this really unassuming woman with glasses, and in her private magical life, she's like doing crazy sorts of divination, nailing tongues to walls and things. It's very like intense. But you might be that sort of Thessaly personality where you look like you would be towing the line with anyone else, and actually when you do speak your truth, it can be quite controversial, and that can be a bit of a jarring experience for others, because it's like, well, we thought you were one of us. Look at you. You're doing this. You're living this kind of life. You're wearing these things. There's a journey there, and that might be why we've had this dissociative leap between where you think you are and where you see other spiritual people as being, you know, or those with the trappings, or those who you feel are further along than you, but we might not be, right? Yeah, there's a gap that you wish to address, but I don't think you've been doing so in quite the right way. That's why that was the other way around. But let's talk about what the cards from the bottom actually were, shall we? We have a Four of Swords. So you might be a big dreamer. You might be someone who gets dreamlike messages. From the fact that I started in blue, you may be somebody who's quite clairvoyant, in a literal sense. You may see stuff, not in a schizophrenic way. It's just a thing some of us have, right? And it's been going a lot longer than any kind of diagnostics, let's put it that way. So you may be a visual person, even in just the way that you think. You may imagine visions sort of superimposed onto reality rather than seeing stuff in a like objective, ophthalmological kind of a way, if that makes sense. Like you're not seeing it, but you're seeing it. That might be part of your skill set. We've got a Fool in reverse. Funny that I mentioned Hellblazer, because that's JC. The other JC. We've got the Devil in reverse. Again, from the same edition, actually. From the same, I think it's from Sandman, but it's from the JC crossover anyway. Sorry, I won't talk comics. Nine of Pentacles. Four of Wands. And a Six of Swords. Whatever this communication is, you want to be able to transport people away from their known realities and paradigms intellectually by presenting them with a way of being that goes beyond the intellectual and presents as the opportunity for a new start. So when I say it's a creativity reading and not a spirituality reading, this is Theta Theda wants to be part of this. Theda Barrett and all of that like era of film might be relevant. I don't know. Anyway, that was just a thing. Hi, Theda. Yeah, you might be somebody who doesn't brand yourself as a spiritual person or as a healer and is a bit lost as to why you've hit on this, but you are a creative, even if that's just in like the cultivation of a particular Instagram or in the way that you speak, being quite sort of crafty with words. And people have told you could be a writer and you're like, nah. You know, it's, hi, same. But it's, you have a way of going about things creatively, which is not necessarily something that you brand as a role as an artist or as a speaker or as a spiritual teacher or as a healer. But I think that you have also an underlying sense that you could maybe be those things, I guess. But it's just sort of coming about in a way that isn't really following the paths of any of those things because you're not a conventional person. And like I say, it's your approach to other people hits at the intellectual, which is why I'm thinking artist, right? But the way that you go about that is very much the instinctive. The devil reverse and the fool reverse, I'm seeing together as somebody who takes a lot of creative risks and who is quite happy demonstrating a way of being that is very opulent, very earthy, very natural, very, you live deliciously, right? That might be your art, or it might be seen in your art, and art, of course, with such a broad audience goes into inverted commas here. If you are a direct magical practitioner, I see that you're doing that in a way that is, even within that structure, quite, I don't want to say controversial because it's difficult to be controversial in magical circles, but I think that you would find it maybe difficult to be in a group that also thinks your way, and that you spent a good deal of your path so far forging your own path because there's bits of things that seem interesting to you in a kind of chaos magician type fashion, whether or not you identify like that. And you've wanted to pick and choose, and it's not in an appropriative sense. It's not in a way of, oh, this person can't commit to this or that. It's you blending as you move forward in a way that quite genuinely hasn't been done. And well done you, if you're on that kind of a path. It's a very difficult thing. It's, I mean, I come across with my stuff in a very sort of, you know, a way that's been well trodden. And I still find it incredibly difficult to be upfront with the vast majority of people about the kinds of things I do and how I get to them and why, and what I work with and all of that. And you'll see lots of, you know, apologist ramblings in between truths on this channel because I'm still getting to grips with other people's comfort zone around how I work. And I think the same is possibly true of you. The reason we have Don Juan and Advocate, which I couldn't figure out before, is that your sort of expression through yourself in a relatively languorous way is quite flirtatious, it's quite beguiling. I think you charm people into broadening their perspective more than you articulate to them exactly what your perspective is. And again, I admire you for that. Hit me up down below, I'd like to know you. I think that's often a better way of communicating truth, whether that's as an artist or as a spiritual figure. An advocate is that in doing that and in approaching it in that almost indirect fashion, you are advocating for other people to be who they am. It's almost like your spiritual motto is, it do be like that. And that's sort of blanket truth. It's, you know, it's a much more modern embrace of, I kind of do what thou wilt, but do what thou wilt, sorry. And do what thou wilt can be a bit, it can be taken in a way that's not entirely spiritually forthcoming. Whereas I think that your approach is much more, you're not being dogmatic about the way that anyone else should live, think, present, anything. And in doing that, you're giving permission for other people to do their own thing in a way that is quite broad scope transformative, right? The broader colours, the second part of the reading. You see now why we had that honed in bit about shadow work, and now we have this expansive bit, because for many of you, what you've been doing isn't even read either by yourself or others, or vice versa, as being spiritual work. It's a way of operating in the universe that inspires a spiritual openness and investigation in other people without having to call it, I am a such and such, I am a reader, I am a magician, I am an artist, I am whatever it may be. But the challenge of that is that if you, within your own personal framework of how you're doing this, and you are doing it well, by the way, within your unwritten rule book of how you would operate from that, it's difficult to self-correct if you feel you're going off course, because there is no precedent. There is nobody around you doing the same thing to say, hey, I'm not sure that that's what we would do. Nobody's sure that you're what they would do, and that's your work, right? That's who you are, that's how you're operating, that's how you're changing lives, that's how you're healing. But it's almost like there's no marker for whether you're doing particularly well. And that's, I think, what this Four of Swords is about, and what the kind of cleaning up energy that we started with was a bit about. Because it's like, unless you take extra care of yourself and your immediate environment and your sphere of influence, sort of incoming as well as outgoing, you're not going to know whether you're in right vibe. And it's going to be very easy to sort of, for something like feeling that you need to emulate others or feeling emulated, to push you really off track very suddenly. Because there's no like, it's almost like the idea of you being on track is this really ephemeral sort of Piscean blend thing that it's so difficult to quantify. I almost want to tell you to make like a list of like, I know that I'm doing well in whatever this is, whether you call it spiritual mission or not, when my work looks like this, or when I present like this, or when I feel like this around people, or when people's feedback to me is of this kind of a nature. And be careful with that one, because they won't always like you, but there will be certain things that they say in a pattern when they don't like you, and you're like, that's you, not me. Or like, I tapped into something that you're working on there and I did good, you know? Sometimes the feedback that we get that is entirely negative is just as sweet in a way, because it plays to a pattern of like, no, this isn't a constructive criticism against me. This is someone meeting who I am and how differently I operate and getting ruffled. And that can be difficult, but it can be confirmation at the same time. So I'm told to say that as well. So, right, I'm going to go back to these archetypes. What can we tap into to better know kind of where we are? Excuse me. Oh, you will shuffle properly. You may also feel like in your immediate environment you're having to kind of impose your will on things that shouldn't be your problem. A relationship, a key relationship, perhaps pets, perhaps children, perhaps relatives, friends, but there's some kind of place that you're having to put your foot down, I think, that's distracting you from knowing whether you're doing well in this bit that we're talking about here, right? And I'm not going to go into that bit of your life because there's 1,001 readings elsewhere on the channel that cover all kinds of relationships and hazards and crises and different sets of circumstances. That's not sort of what this is addressing, but I want to confirm with you that there is something that is taking some of your energy and attention which should not be right now. And it is absolutely okay, my dude, in the spirit of things, in the scheme of things, to just cut the strings on that for a little while you figure out what looks like you doing well right? Because again, you doing well is not other people's definition of someone doing well. You need to be careful that the people around you saying, well, you're not operating how I would operate, isn't something you're taking on of like, oh, I must not be doing okay then. Because the whole reason that you need to operate how you do is that a lot of people talk shit, right? A lot of people are not on your path. And, you know, you shouldn't be telling them what to do either, but perhaps you're meeting each other and rubbing each other up the wrong way to say, there are these two very different modes of being, and to get both of you to explore how you relate to the opposite one, right? Anyway, that's coming through. Hit me up down below if there's confirmation. If you can feed back at any point of this reading, I would love that, because it's a tiny channel and people often see that there aren't comments and then they're like, I don't think I will comment this time round. And then it leads to no comments, but I'd like to engage with you. Just saying. Okay, so we have a judge in the upright, right? Light attributes, balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power. I think this is about managing your power. I think this whole reading, really. They didn't want to tell me it was a reading about power, because if I'd known that it was a copycat thing and a reading about power, I would have gone into my ego head and I would have made this an intentional reading about how to get your power back, which I've done before on the channel. You can find that elsewhere. Whereas actually, I think the message from Spirit was, you are already sitting in your power. There is something outside of you which is prodding it at the moment, whether that be that you don't feel quite where you should be, or whether it's that someone else is prodding at you and being annoying. And this is to get you to examine your relationship to the power that you already hold, not to a perceived idea of power outside of yourself that you wish to step into. Remember earlier we were saying about how we're talking today about where it is that you are, and not so much about where it is that you want to be, because you perceive a gap that perhaps makes you feel a bit alienated or a bit not there yet, between who you are right here, right now, as you're watching this reading, no matter what you're wearing, no matter what you look like, no matter what you've been doing today, no matter how much energy you have left, versus this ideal, I want to say witch self, or artist self, or spiritual self, or light worker, or, you know, you use whatever language you want. The only way to address the gap is to actually start from where you are. There is another spirituality reading on this channel that sort of addresses this, and I'll link it down below if I remember, because that might be a sort of extension of what I'm saying here, or it might just confirm or qualify some stuff. But I really feel that the message, if I had to sum it up without taking more cards, and I will take more cards, is you can't get there without you now. And it's all very well visualizing, and it's all very well embodying, and I absolutely advocate for those techniques, because frankly they're how I'm able to do this job. If not be here at all, survival wise. But there's a difference between using dream time or waking dream time to manifest by daydreaming about perfect self, versus dreaming of a self that you see as separate from who you are and where you are now, because you have a bit of shame about who you are and where you are now, or because you've framed yourself in the present moment as being less capable than you are. I think it would be very positive. Excuse me, hiccups confirmation. Come on. Ah, the girl. I think it would be very positive for you to take a brutal inventory, actually, of where you are now. But I don't just mean like, oh, I'm sat in my underpants and the kitchen needs cleaning and I've got work tomorrow and all that sort of shit. I mean also, and I raised these kids, and I got through these surgeries, and I made these friends, and I bagged this partner, and I dreamt this thing up enough that it entered my life, even if I'm not currently on a yacht with it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a phrase I've got all these little post-it note affirmations around my house because I don't live with someone currently, and I'm allowed, right? And if anybody laughs at me, it's like, well, go then. But one of them, I wish I could remember the wording on it because it goes in subliminally, but I can't think of the sentence. But it's about, like, if you can think of something in order to seek for it, in the seeking of it, you already have it, right? If you can visualize the person that you want to be, even just in like a Pinterest sense, you're kind of already that person because you've already mentally eliminated anything which is not that. And I want you to think more in that sort of a framework than in going, oh, but I'm not a witch living in a castle. Or I'm not, you know, a boss babe running a business in Hawaii, or I'm not in a perfect partnership with this person that I've had my eye on, or whatever it is, right? There's this distance that you're creating for yourself. And I'm here to say the distance isn't there if you can perfectly conceive of having that thing already. Because in that conception of it, in that little mental film of it, you've already got rid of everything that isn't it. You've done a banishing right there. It's gone, right? But I think the trap that you could fall into, and that many spiritual people fall into, is kind of dreaming your life away by doing that and by saying, it is mine, I have perfectly visualized it, without being willing to look at the you in your underpants eating a cherry bakewell on the sofa. That is also part of that chronological spectrum, right? The you that you are now is on the journey to that thing. But that means that without the acceptance of the you that you are now, my buddy, my guy, my friend, my sister, if you don't acknowledge where you are, you ain't never going to get there. And perhaps that's why I've come to you in a slightly less formal way, wearing less makeup, recording at a different time of the night, with my knees out in what should be a very Witches of Dathomir outfit. It's got lots of streamy things coming off it and it's very grand, but it just looks a mess when I'm sat here like this. And I think that sort of speaks to it. It's that I'm just here chatting because we're just chatting because we are where we are. We are who we are. You're starting from here and now, right? And I think there's something about that you're like, nah, I don't want this bit though. And that stumbling block is where you start. That's the thing that you have left to cleanse, or the thing that you have left to kind of concentrate on. And perhaps if it feels a bit big for you, pulling in focus to creativity, to spirituality, to, you know, this sort of end goal state that seems very grand and very distant, this reading is your call to go, all right, well, fuck all of that and just apply for the job, lose the weight, call the guy, put your child to bed, you know, whatever it is. That's this like, I don't like this bit though. You know, if you're saying I don't like this bit and it's something as simple as you're sat watching this in a messy room, I hate to echo Jordan Peterson on anything, but clean your room. And if it's a much bigger thing, if it's an addiction, or if it's a grief process, or if it's the dissolution of a long-term relationship, or something really heavy and hefty, then accept that you cannot move forward without that process evolving a little further, and that is part of your spiritual mission. To get over that stuff is part of the job that you're here to do. You will not be able to be your bad self in the future without having worked through this bit. You don't, particularly with things like grief, and again, speaking from very recent experience, those of you who are subscribed for a while know I've taken some time off for a bereavement, and I'm still sort of going through some of that. You can't guess what you're meant to get out of the end of that process when you're in the middle of it. You can't. It's not all right. And we talked about spiritual bypassing, right? Similarly, if there's something that you know you need to let go of, that you haven't been because you're a bit scared, don't be tempted to assume who you will be after it's over when you don't currently have the balls to cut it off. Because the process may teach you so much more than any person on the internet who's done that thing can give you platitudes about, right? Myself included. If you're in a process of exorcism, banishing, releasing, KonMari, grief, you know, however big, however small, but that kind of an energy, I can't tell you what to expect out of that. That's why it's useful. Anybody online who says that they can tell you what to expect out of that either is telling you a portion of what you will experience in your unique, fluorescent, wondrous, nuanced self, which will not have the same experiences as anyone else in the world. Or if they're not just giving you a snippet of the full picture, which is you, and they're claiming to know all of it, they're talking out their ass. Sorry, experts. So yeah, I think there isn't as much of a gap between who you are and who you want to be. I think that any difficult relationships you've had of late, any temptations to emulate somebody else's path or presentation or anything like that in order to push yourself a little bit further along to where you think they are, those experiences are just to nudge you in the direction of, hey, your soul wants to move this way, you want to learn this stuff, you want to, I don't want to say be better because that implies that you need to be fixed, and I don't think you do, I think you're perfect, but you want to grow, right? And your current circumstances are agreeing with that, and I'm agreeing with that, and Spirit is agreeing with that. But you can't grow by skipping the hard bit and telling everybody the growth work that you've done from somebody else's account of that work. And you also can't grow by being so individualistic that you don't have a framework for your own success, but then also looking to other people for what they think your framework should be, which flies in the face of individualism. Stop listening to other people, right? Present company accepted for the next however many minutes, but you might want to stop listening to me too, I don't know. But there's something here about producing greatness or embodying greatness, you know, whatever you feel is better for you, by truly following your own compass, and that being the leap that you need to make. It's not that you need something circumstantial to boost you enough to the point where you can begin to follow your own compass. It's that you have to trust yourself here and now, today, imperfect, not necessarily where you want to be, and be like, yeah, I know the way. I'm enough. My needs matter, as the song goes. And also trust your gifts, right? I'm going to get something more on gifts because we did get that thing about possible clairvoyancy or dream work, or, and again, this could be if you're just like a creative, an artist or something like that. I'm not taking that one, I'm taking the bottom one because it was buzzing. What do you want to show me? Now I'm seeing a beaver. You want to talk exclusively in animals today, do you? Got a Hierophant reverse, breaking with convention. An Ace of Swords reversed, so a lack of truth or not being truthful with yourself. A Nine of Swords reversed, so you're not actually as attacked from all sides as you think you are. I'm also, now why is that? I'm reminded in this that I've spent the day revisiting Saw movies and researching sawx because I want to go see it this week. Don't come at me if you're not a horror fan. It's not low vibrational, it's just part of the universe expressing itself. Now, why am I getting something about sawx for that eye and for that? I mean, I know why the eye, but why is it sawx? I'm going to take an archetype card. Sorry, guys. Oh, we've got a self-made one. We've got codependent. Blimey. And it's in the upright. Excuse the lack of drawing. I can draw, I just couldn't be bothered. Ability to truly listen to and work with others. Skill in service and caring for the needs and values of another person. Knack for transcending selfishness and the ego, putting others first. Give me a minute. Oh, right, okay, that was fairly simple, actually. You need to stop seeing other people as a trap. Sawx, the eyeball thing, the traps, codependence, seeing other people's needs, not seeing the needs of others as codependency, perhaps maybe relevant for some of you. I've had recent experience with that. Yeah, it's the anxiety that you hold where everything seems honed in on your eyes, so your way of seeing the world, your particular vision for the future, right? It's like being attacked from all sides. In another deck, this would be a lack of sleep card, so you might be having anxiety at night about all of this and where you're going and what you're doing. But this is also very expressive of somebody who feels that their paradigm or their vision is the thing under attack from other people. And when I say attack, it might not be in a direct way. It might be that you feel there are so many people reliant upon you or so many people's codependencies aimed at you that you can't work, where actually, I think that for you to get that card in the upright and not in the shadow indicates to me that I think you're seeing codependency because you feel overwhelmed and because you maybe overcommit to some of the people in your life that aren't so healthy. So when people in your life who are healthy come and ask you for help or ask you to flex your gifts, right? It comes across as overwhelming. It's like all the swords are aimed at you and your worldview, and then you get into this mode of like, how dare you attack the way that I see everything? And actually all the person did was ask you to lift their shopping through the door. Or like call them back, or like, I don't know, like they asked your opinion, or they were like, hey, you have weird dreams about stuff, can you have a dream for me, or whatever it was. And you were like, how dare you make fun of everything that I've been doing? You know that I don't have time for you. Why am I hearing this in the voice of, what's his name? Nathan Barley guy. But it's that sort of grandiose, like, no, how dare you ask of me? And actually, they're not asking much. It's just that you feel attacked because you're not living in a conventional way, right? That Hierophant in reverse. But not living in a conventional way is your choice. It's the right choice, but it's your choice, you know? So, like, don't come for people, is what I'm saying. It's only a minor message and you don't have to be horribly offended. This is why I'm delivering it in a jokey way. But I do think it's like, the Saw movies as well, like the biggest criticism you get against a $1 billion franchise, which by the way indicates that it's quite successful with a variety of people. The biggest thing that you hear from detractors of it is like, torture porn, I couldn't, without them ever having seen any of it, obviously. And this idea of the traps being so negative, and it's also gory and also negative, and I just feel so overwhelmed. And I think that people who indulge in those kinds of entertainment must just be awful in some fashion, instead of trying to like understand the body or psychology or just have a laugh or just accept the world as is. You know, they're terrible people and it's all a trap. And in the film, the traps are, you have thought under a certain paradigm, you have expressed yourself in a certain way without questioning where your worldview comes from. So John Kramer's gonna like put you in a thing that you can't get out of and make you lose your own limb or pull out an eyeball or whatever it is. Sorry. And it's like the people who don't like those movies, it's a trap. It's a negative trap. We're all getting sucked into all this negativity. The people who like those movies but kind of don't want to talk more publicly about that, it's a trap, right? Because we're going to get hate. The people in the movies, it's a trap. In a very literal sense. And in John Kramer's world, being Jigsaw, it's a trap. Because he can't actually process his own stuff. He can't live through his own shadow and articulate his own fate in a way that allows for people to make mistakes. So instead of accepting his, spoilers, terminal diagnosis, he goes into an energy of everybody else is wrong and I'm going to punish them for my last few days on Earth. And that's how you get all the Saw movies. And I'm going to induct other people to do the same, spoilers. And that's how you get all the sequels. And it's this, like, what I'm trying to get at, circling back round away for those who aren't horror fans, is that there is something about your worldview right now which is seeing other people as antagonistic to your purposes, when actually it's all part of it. It's all good. There is no negative energy. There is no punitive trap. You are not a vessel of damnation for those who you see as slighting anybody else. You are not, conversely, a complete sociopath for understanding that there are taboo elements in society which can be spiritually understood and interpreted. You know, you're not, other people aren't a trap. The way you're thinking isn't a trap. Life isn't a trap. The rat race isn't a trap. You're just making choices, bro. Same as me. And you've chosen to shove some of that stuff aside and go your own way. But I think that because there's no marker for that, you don't know how well you're doing. You have to have the John Kramer arrogance in a way and be like, listen, it's making sense to me. I think it's perfect. And I'm not, obviously, I'm not saying go out there and hurt anybody. Obviously, I'm not saying there's anything admirable about him. I mean, he's pretty good at structures, but that aside, I'm not telling you to go out and hurt anyone or to empathise with a man who is very purposefully being represented as deranged. But what I'm saying is that there is nothing exempt from holiness. There is nothing exempt from art. There is nothing that is not the right way. And rather than that being a destabilising thing which puts you in this dissociative mode that we talked about with the horse, I think it's time to view it as fantastic. There is nothing that is not God, right? Let's use the word God because it's easier. So I have to make my own sets of rules and decisions about what I feel to be most holy, about what I view as it working. What do I consider to be, yes, I'm having a good week by the Most High or the Most Low or whatever you believe in, right? Or when am I having a good week in terms of expressing myself? When have I set a successful trap for the intellectual or healing stumbling blocks of others? When have I made it inevitable for somebody else to come to conclusions about the world which eventually empower them. Because again, we're talking about power. Your rule book is not going to be the same as anyone else's, and it's time to literally write it, right? To the extent that you're able to write or note it in some fashion, whether it's dictaphone, I don't know. Do what you want to do. But you're not going to be able to go forward from this point without deciding for yourself what progress looks like to you. That's what I've been trying to get at. And if that means that you want to be more succinct than I've managed to be, fantastic. That goes in your rule book. If it means that you want to be as rambly as I was and sort of incorporate everything in the way that I do, that goes in your rule book. If it means that you want to operate on high vibe and you want to be like, even in my grief, even in my lack, even in my struggle, I want to go through my days feeling like my baseline is this. That's okay. That goes in your rule book, right? And when you're not feeling like that, you figure out the work that you do to bring you back to base. If it's the other way and you're like, in my shadow state, I can be wherever I want to be, the thing tethering me to my eventual purpose is this thing. Again, write it down. But you see, the common denominator here is that so many people are going to be watching this eventually, and share if you like it, by the way, so there's more. Because nobody knows who I am right now. I've been reading for years. But, there are going to be many different ways of approaching this. And the only thing I can say to kind of bunch in all of us at this point with the information we've been given is you have to make your own rules. That is part of it. And it can't be just copying what somebody else is doing anymore. You've gone past that point. You've advanced. You've ascended. But it also can't be, I'll trust in it and it'll be willy-nilly and whatever. Because you need to know when you're doing all right in order to put yourself back on the path of doing all right when things are a bit skew-whiff or difficult. And if you're not in a difficult mode right now, fantastic, fandabidozy, congratulations. But put something in place so that you can get back to this pretty easily on your terms, yeah? Ending with the 4 of Cups. This image makes me think of Stalker. The movie. Again, with the movie references, you may be like a horror sci-fi person, who knows. But it makes me think of the journey that they make sort of through all these watery places and the thing with the dog. And it's a fantastic film, so if you haven't seen it, do. But it's a film essentially about people going to a room where wishes are granted and all the things that they have to kind of encounter within themselves, all the self-sabotaging principles or the lack or the fears that they have about going to such a place and really facing up to it, and whether it's real, and whether, if it is real, it's okay for someone like them to be involved with it, and whether on the way they think they're going to be attacked, and all these sort of things about the environment are almost projected out into the environment in a very strange way, so that these travelers, together with somebody who has experience of that realm, can come to terms with what their desires even are. It's a really, really interesting film. I think 1980, might be 81, Russia, and it's available wherever. I think you can stream it through Amazon these days. But that's what this 4 of Cups is making me think of. And don't forget as well that in the sort of Smith-Waite interpretation of the 4 of Cups, there is a cup being offered to the person from kind of the sky or from spirit, and the person's like, not right now. So there is, again, that same energy. And for those who have seen Stalker, what I want to put to you, or if you plan to watch it soon, and again, encourage it, there are games and things to do with it, but please see the film. Or read the book, Roadside Picnic. It's very good. It's not quite as relevant as the film for this, though. Sorry, getting off track. For those of you familiar with it or about to be, maybe your role is kind of like a stalker in the zone, right? Maybe you're going to get experience in traveling through places where wishes come true or where weird shit happens, and you're going to have to be the guide. And the thing that I sort of remember, like I watched this movie as a kid and it just stuck with me forever, and now I'm obsessed with it and it's everywhere and that's why the tattoo. But the thing that I remember about him navigating this kind of charged space, which is a bit sci-fi or may or may not be a fantasy space as well, this experienced guy who takes this troop of people through the zone, it's very situationist. He navigates the place by tying like a knot to a bit of it's not string but like ribbon or something, and then he kind of does this and he throws it and it falls in an unreal or unlikely way to the bit that they're allowed to walk to next. So it's very bit by bit, and you find through the movie that if people don't follow that route that he's kind of asking the air for, weird shit starts to happen, or places shift from where they used to be, and it's all a bit intimidating, frightening. It's very fairy, actually, very fae. And yes, it will resonate with some of this sort of liminal space stuff that's been invented since, because that's partly where people got these kinds of ideas, right? But you may be somebody like that who has to navigate for other people in a way that isn't traditional, or in a way that takes them through areas that seem straightforward in very unstraightforward ways that are guided back to you. And that can be through art, that can be through picking up on stuff in a spiritual way like what we're doing here. It could be something else entirely, but you will know for you. And I think that process of navigation, again, the stalker in the zone, the guy I've got the tattoo of, he can't ask anyone, right? He can't just be like, oh, let me check in with Ziggy, like, where are we going next, right? It's he has to ask the air. He has to just know. He has to be able to smell it, what's right to do. He has to pay attention to animals moving through the environment, to the way that things fall on the ground, to changes in the people around him and whether that means something weird's going on. And in doing that, he has to sort of be slightly, again with the full reversed, he has to be slightly mad. He has to be outside of the way that everyone else normally operates, and he has to live a bit of a weird life. But he just is the stalker, it's just his role, right? And if you're called to a spiritual life, you're already in it. You can't run away. And you can't ask your old fucking gym teacher what you should be doing. Or even your rabbi. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, at some point you just have to be able to trust yourself. And I think that's why this is all summing up in that Four of Cups and in the story of Stalker, of Roadside Picnic, of the Stalker in the Zone. Indeed, arguably of Tarkovsky himself, if you're interested in directors. But before I go into more of a sci-fi ramble, I think I should close down and say, that's it from me. Because you have picked up on what I've been saying, sometimes in a literal sense, that gives you some actions to take care of, sometimes in a sense that is nothing to do with what I'm actually trying to get at, and instead is to do with the way that I'm saying it, the way that I look when I'm saying it, the things it made you think of from the rest of your day. These are your ways of navigating through the reading, through the zone, right? Your associative network, your unique application of everything that's incoming information to you is more important right now than anything else that's going on circumstantially or any advice that I could give you. And I think the only way that I can really sum up is to say, use that. Make your own set of rules. Take the guidance that you've received from this, even if it's not what I gave. And I want to say good luck on your journey. But let me know. I enjoyed that one. If you have an indication of where it is that you are headed, please tell me. I'd love to know, because there's such a cool energy. Also, oh man, I almost didn't do the self-promotion thing. Please like if this was relevant. Please share. Please subscribe. Please ding the dong so that you're up to date with all of the readings. I am doing a full Utober. There will be content out every day. I may be dead by November. We shall see. But, you know, I'm doing this to boost the channel because at the time of filming, I have under 30 subscribers, and yet I've been reading for years and years and years, mostly in person, and I'm trying to kind of make it so that I can live that digital life and do things more from an online basis and interact with more of you from further afield as well, because frankly, I'm sick of reading for Londoners. So yeah, please share me with anyone that you think would benefit from this. Please check out the rest of the channel. There's a load of playlists, randomizations. We do all kinds of subjects. If you came for love and you were disappointed, we've got a whole playlist of love readings. If you came for something utterly random and you want more, we've got like A to Z Lucky Dip Psychic Tombolas going. We've got random readings that I don't know what they are until I kind of begin to deliver them, like today. And then we've got very structured, pick a card, we know the question before we go in kind of stuff. So please check all of that out. If you'd like to have guidance from me in a more direct way where you can personalize your question, absolutely highly recommend, for obvious reasons. And my shop will be open again from the 22nd. So please check out the link in the doobly-doo if you're arriving after that point. Or save it somewhere if you want to book with me and you're like thinking up what it is that you want to ask about in the meantime, because I'm absolutely free for you to personalize your spiritual guidance. I'd like to do more of those sorts of readings, to be quite honest, because a lot of it is love readings and I love them, but you can get that anywhere, right? Come to me for the juicy shit. All right, I'll catch you later. You take care.